team Innovo Consulting from the University of GUELPH, HUMBER, Canada. Can they come up?
Good afternoon, VW AG Board of Directors. My name is Daniel Bielak, and alongside me today are my colleagues Emma, Shirin, and Michael. And together, we are Innovo Consulting. At Innovo Consulting, we pride ourselves on connecting the dots for VW AG globally. We've taken the 5 challenges that you've presented towards us today and outlined the problem statement for you. VW AG is trying to become the iconic car of the electric age. However, they are encountering strategic roadblocks, undefined and inconsistent strategies which hinders the Transform 2025. From that problem statement, we identified what our priority decision matrix looks like. We've looked at the factors of organizational impact, urgency, ethical effect, and the financial benefit. The reason we've looked at these factors is we feel and recommend that these factors are the greatest factors to be considering the strategy moving forward. As you can see from our totals, e-mobility is number 1, with the close second to being strategy, structure, and cost optimization, MEB, and driverless technology. Therefore, the key takeaway is that Navistar is a non-issue as it's not ranked on our matrix, and that VW AG must pursue a focused strategy to achieve the Transform 2025 goals. The Navistar does not consist with this focused strategy, as it does not focus on the electrification of the vehicles that are inside of the brand. It does not focus on your current opportunities within Apollo, and then also your ride-hailing service as well. So with that, I'd now like to introduce Emma to continue our presentation.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Now, Volkswagen AG has received a lot of success initially with its e-mobility initiative. However, with every new initiative, there are some drawbacks, there are some problems that do occur. Now, we at Innovo Consulting have considered the major problems that have occurred and have considered strategies and implementations that you can use. Now, with the e-mobility strategy, what we have identified is that you've exposed yourselves to a potential recall using the carcinogenic metals in the EVs, which has the potential to damage your overall brand strategy that you have been using to market these e-mobility vehicles, which is late but not defect-free, no recall. So as you can see, a recall really does set you back in terms of your brand image. Along with your brand image, there are a lot of also ethical implications you need to think of. You're putting in very harmful materials into these batteries, which could overall hurt your customers in the end, which obviously is an ethical impact that you need to consider. Now we have created 3 phases in which you can solve these problems. Because there is a pending decision from the KBA, we have done almost a decision tree, but it shows if you are established guilty, you have to continue a method or decide a method of how you're going to recall these cars, because obviously they cannot be available for sale. You also need to do a press release, as Volkswagen does have a history, unfortunately, of having these negative PR things happen. So we decided that you should release a press release afterwards. And also, you need to audit your suppliers. You currently are working with S4, which is your supplier. So you should conduct an audit to see what exactly is going wrong, what you can help and collaborate with together. If you are not guilty and the decision does come through, we do recommend that you audit your suppliers anyways, just to make sure that there are no inefficiencies and that you're all on the same page as well. Now we have outlined phase 2 as well, so if you are found guilty, we recommend that you do a voluntary universal recall, which will cost your company about 1.5 billion euros. However, you have about 28 billion euros on hand in cash, so we suggest that it comes from that funding as well. And then lastly, in phase 3, you need to monitor and control your decisions. You need to monitor and control your suppliers just to see that everything is going well and that your overall brand image is protected. Next, we are going to quickly speak about the other problems that we have encountered after analyzing the company. And they come into two categories, which we have sorted them into. So we've established what you are in control of and what you are not in control of. So in control is your battery capacity, the long time charging, and the car dealer networks. In terms of those strategy or those problems that you are in control of, what we recommend is that you send a TQM team to China, S4, to collaborate with those to get common solutions, but then also look at your dealer networks. You want to make sure that you are selling your EVs effectively, and not all dealers are quite understanding that. So it's important that you develop that training program as well. Now I'd like to introduce Shirin to talk about our strategy.
Thank you, Emma. Now, when we were analyzing the strategy structure and cost optimization for your organization, one of the things we did notice that this poses a potential ethical dilemma for VWAG. Under the analysis and recommendation, we noticed that there is a lack of managing the stakeholder expectations, which are your employees, that's causing discontent among them. Therefore, we must strengthen the organization internally before we have an external outlook. Specifically under phase 1, it is very important that the organization holds a meeting with the newly appointed service executive to communicate that we will be transitioning him to a role more suited according to his skills, and ensure that we are transitioning him into the VWAG executive program, which I will speak about later. And we also have to make sure that the CEO's expectations are aligned with that of the group's goals. So any actions that the CEO might be taking should not undermine the organization or should not cause more problems within the organization. So we want to make sure that we're collaborating with him in order to drive the Transform 2025 strategy. And in phase 2, we want to make sure that there's effective communication of these changes happening with the employees, specifically with the independent contractors. We want to make sure that we are finding opportunities to transition these independent contractors into full-time roles within the organization, because ultimately this is a very, they have a lot of human capital that will be useful to our organization. So we want to make sure that we keep it within the organization and leverage that to our abilities as much as possible. And finally, in phase 3, we want to make sure that we're utilizing change champions, which are select individuals that are on board with your organization's strategy. So we already have buy-in from them, and they make sure that they create a change accepting environment for all of the other employees to follow through positive reinforcement, and they nudge them in the positive direction to accept these change management initiatives that the organization might come through. And specifically in phase 3, as I mentioned before, we must make sure to develop the VWAG executive program, which is an 8-month program, and it will be based on application from the executives themselves. They will nominate specific individuals to participate in this and make sure that they're developing certain skills as like managing stakeholders, their communication, developing leadership, which will ensure that the issue we faced under strategy structure cost optimization does not occur. With that said, I'd like to welcome back Daniel to talk about the MEB platform.
Thank you very much, Shirin. Just to quickly brief on the MEB platform, our recommendation is to go forward with a joint venture with BYD to become the #1 EV producer in China and stop Tesla from dominating this market, as China is the #1 electric car market inside of the globe, closely followed by the United States. Investing in the construction costs of $3.7 million in the factory of Shenzhen, and to make sure that you're assisting in the branding and the marketing by labeling these cars about the German made and the quality associated with them. With that, I'd like to re-invite Michael to discuss.
Thank you, Daniel. We as Innovo Consulting wanted to take your key considerations into account, and we do agree with partnering with your competitors in order to get this knowledge sharing. We believe that the partnership would forward in regards to taking on the artificial intelligence would be a great strategy for your company, and we believe that this can be handled in 3 main phases. This can be handled by committing the memo of understanding, preparing the $2.6 billion amount of US dollars to pay for the deal. This will be leveraged with the cash on hand, which, again, mentioned by my colleague Emma, was 28 billion euros. 28 billion euros. The total value of Argo AI, when projecting into the future for till 2025, gives us a net present value of 70 billion. When we take on the 30%, and that from their portion and forward, this will give us 21 billion. Give Volkswagen 21 billion of value added to your firm. Phase 3, I'd just like to touch on as well, would be to consistently monitor the situation and to test and integrate artificial intelligence technology into your cars to make sure that you're moving forward. One thing that I'd like to also add is that this is approximately 70 billion US dollars of value added that can be unlocked into your firm. With that, I'd like to pass it back to Daniel, who will be going over our synergies.
Thank you very much, Michael. We've addressed some of the risks regarding our implementation strategy on our risk and mitigation scenario. But to conclude today's presentation, I'd like to say, in the words of Herbert Dice again, to never let a good crisis go to waste, but equally, never let a crisis happen again. And that's why it's really important that you consider this strategy by leveraging the focus strategy through the joint venture with BYD, the joint venture with Ford and Argo AI, and mitigating the potential exposure in the e-mobility strategy. VW AG will become the #1 electric vehicle producer on the market in e-mobility, and this all allows you to develop a sustainable future, positioning you to never let a crisis like Dieselgate ever happen again. Thank you so much for your time. We are Team Innovo Consulting. If you have any questions, we'd be more than happy to answer them. Thank you.
Hello, well done. If I may ask you, if I go to your e-mobility strategy, what was your thinking about waiting for the KBA report and then in phase 2, if it says you are actually guilty? Just clue me into your thinking. Are you under the impression that you do have dangerous materials in these parts, or are you not sure? So first answer that question for me, just yes or no.
You have metals that are, the government is still considering whether they are dangerous or not.
Okay, great. So it helps me understand your thinking. That's great. And then if I can go to the strategy, structure, and cost optimization issue. If you had to, in one sentence, state the central fundamental problem in this area, what is it for Volkswagen?
Would you allow us a second to confer
Sure.
with my colleagues? Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question. And if we were to sum up the strategy, structure, and cost optimization in one sentence, we believe that currently there's inconsistent messaging within the organization. Any changes that do occur, whether it's the CEO placing an operations manager within the executive board, it is not.
So, thank you. Can I ask just for clarification, do you think the miscommunication is in one particular section of the organization or organization-wide? Why did I do that?
We believe it is organization-wide, but it starts from the top. So if the tone at the top is consistent and it is communicated, it would make sure that the organization is on track.
Thank you for a good presentation. Actually, I have a follow-up question in terms of that. Because reading the case study, it seems you have a dysfunctional board because there's dissenting directors on the board. Why would you consider that not as your top priority? Because if you have a dysfunctional organization, it doesn't matter what other strategies you implement, it will not work. Just explain your thinking in terms of the prioritization.
Thank you for your question. The reason we did decide to put e-mobility first because of its pressing ethical issues in terms of the dangerous substances in the batteries. Again, Dieselgate has happened. It's not quite resolved yet. It's something that we really don't want to build off of. So it's really important that we believe that Volkswagen deal with the issue at hand, the very pressing issue that could not only cause them to incur more ethical issues, but also incur issues that damage their brand even further. You just launched a new initiative, a new slogan that says late but defect-free, no recalls. So that kind of contradicts what is happening currently in the company in terms of the messaging from the KBA and if there is actually going to be these negative substances within the batteries. So that was our reasoning between putting e-mobility first. We didn't really want to let Dieselgate or an issue like Dieselgate happen again. And in terms of strategy, why we put it second, In terms of the pressing issues, we just felt that e-mobility was more pressing at the moment because you're potentially hurting your customers. So it's important that you decide what method of recall you would want to do. And yeah, that's just the reason why we put it first.
Thank you for the presentation and for the analysis. Taking the point there, and I like when you quote someone, don't let it happen again. So you were coming from a Dieselgate situation, and you explain why you want to have e-mobility as a first priority. But can you explain why you leave it as a chance to say if I find guilty or if I don't find guilty? I mean, I think that because the brand image from the company has been already impacted, and there has been already studies that there are some faulties. Why? Can you explain the rationale why you leave at 50% chances? And then secondly, can you please clarify what is the time period of phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3? Are we talking months, years, or days?
Thank you for your question. With regards to your first question, I can perhaps answer and clarify a few things about the reason we structured it as if guilty and not guilty. The KBA is still considering their judgment on the materials. That being said, we are recommending, regardless of the decision, to audit the suppliers to ensure the compliance, and then equally work with the supplier and send a total quality management team from your organization to the current battery supplier and ensure that this does not happen again. And if they do find the materials, then incur that $1.5 billion expense to recall all these vehicles, because it is the right thing to do. As we said, if you are incurring another Dieselgate-like scenario, not only does that hurt your brand and build, again, more distrust between yourselves and the community and the consumers, but equally, the shareholder value lost in another scandal like this could be forever damaging. And so that's why we recommend, regardless of the situation, to focus on that voluntary universal recall, and also to focus on ensuring that message.
Fully in line with you, and I thank you for clarifying that point. Yeah. But why you don't go right away for the universal recall? Why you need to wait until, because you already have proof that is some faulty materials there. Why do you need to wait until additional tests?
Yeah. Do you mind if I take a second to confer? To further elaborate on our response here, again, regardless of whether it is guilty or not guilty, you're still going to be going back to those same engines and ensuring that you are voluntarily asking people what is working for them, what is not working for them, and if there is still those materials that are involved. And furthermore, you're still going to be doing this total quality management system. You're still going to be ensuring that these batteries are not a problem. And if you find, regardless of how long it takes for this report to come out, if you find it through your independent study within a month or less, in a few weeks, then you will issue the recall, because it is your moral obligation, is your fiduciary duty. So regardless of the weight, we're just saying that if the wait is less than a certain period of time, then okay, fine. But if it is more than a period of time, you must take that action. So that's why we say, regardless, this is what you're going to do. And if the case, then recall all the vehicles. Does that clarify? That is dependent on the specific scenario.
All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That was a very good presentation. I enjoyed listening to you. My first question is on the MEB platform, right? You've estimated that it would cost us 3.750 million euros. And according to your prioritization is number 3, which means it's not urgent now. I'm just curious as to why do you want us to make this investment into this shared factory instead of concentrating on other things for now and probably actually even evaluating other options in terms of this? What is the main reason why you think this is a good road for us to take?
We believe that doing this joint venture with BYD would be the appropriate solution just because there is a lot of knowledge that can be tapped into as well. Being a large maker in China, this gives us the experience in China and the ability to learn from them on what they do, as well as being able to identify that populations are growing everywhere. At some point, the world will also become just as populated. So we do need to also take into consideration that compact cars are the future. We do need to take whatever knowledge we can get from BYD and use outside of China for ourselves, or for Volkswagen.
All right, that's fine. Then help me on the strategy and cost optimization, right? I thought you were going to tell us what to do about the centralization strategy. So given that the environment is currently so chaotic, should we stop? Should we proceed?
May we be allowed to answer this question? Yeah? Well, thank you. With regards to the centralization and decentralization issues, we understand that it does look like there is a consolidation of power by some of the executives. They feel this way. That being said, that's why we're recommending to ensure that there is a proper expectations and aligned goals on the recruitment to get to become an executive. That's why we also recommend transitioning that executive that Herbert had hired and many people feel is disrupting this organization and the management board, to move them away and transition them away from the board into different duties, and then put this program in place so that you're enabling that constant communication, because the cost effectiveness and of having a centralized organization than having specific areas decentralized allows, if communicated correctly and properly, allows for a really sustainable organization. Thank you so much for your time.